Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Satoli. Today we are in Vevey, Indiana at the Thiebaud Farmstead with Miss Martha Bladen, Director of the Switzerland County Historical Society. Hi Martha, how are you today?
Oh, fine, thank you.
So tell me about this house. I've always heard about it. This is my first time to visit the home. It's outstanding. Tell me about this place.
Okay, the house we're sitting in now was the house built by Justi and Mary Thiebaud, but their parents, his parents, had immigrated here 1817, along with two other families, the Schenks and the Von Burens, and they settled here from Switzerland. And then Harriet and Frederick, the parents, after they'd passed away, the son, Justi, takes over the farmstead, and this is the home he built after he had put in a hay press, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, hay press, and that was how he was able to afford a new home for his family of 10 children.
Okay. And the original home, the original kitchen is still out back, is that
Yes, the
correct?
kitchen is a stone-built kitchen, and there's also a smokehouse.
Okay, and then this is actually the second house on the property?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So once it was built, going back to the hay press, how did all that get started and where did it take him?
Okay, the hay press is an invention of Samuel Hewitt, and it was in 1843. Actually, it was an improvement on the hay press, and he patented it, and it became quite the industry in Switzerland County then. There were over 200 barns that had these mammoth, it's floor to ceiling, hay presses in them, and it made it possible to take something that was usually a local commodity, hay, and bale it into 300 to 400 pound bales, and then it was shipped by flatboats and steamboats down to New Orleans, where they could get a much higher price.
Okay, okay. So you said there was 200 to 300 farms that actually had these hay presses?
Well, we're thinking there were probably 200 barns throughout the county.
Okay.
Yes, throughout the county.
And how many are left?
Three.
No
Three are
kidding.
left. And one had come up for sale, and one of our members, Denver Markland, had always thought that was such an important part of our local history, and it was really the economic development of the area, and that we should preserve one. So when one came up for sale, we were fortunate enough to be able to purchase it, and then we had to dismantle it and move it off of the property where it was out on McCreary's Ridge. And then this is the place where it ended up, because this farmstead had a hay press, but over the years, a lot of the barns still are here, but the hay presses were removed because it's this mammoth piece of machinery right in the middle of the barn, and so it's in the way of livestock and machinery, and so they took them out.
Okay, okay. So the hay presses, what was the lifespan of the hay press? It began in what, the early 1800s?
Well, 1843 is when the patent was here.
Okay, and how long were they
It went up
used?
until about the 1880s, they continued to bale on them. I'm just saying the industry with the shipping, that was when it started to decline. But they were still used here up into the early 1900s.
And it was a real moneymaker, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Well, just by the agricultural census of Justi and with this farmstead. His agricultural census in 1850 was he had done 6 tons of hay. Okay, so a decade later, he puts in his Haypress Barn in 1850. 1860, he's done 39 tons of hay. Okay, by the next decade, 1870, he's got 80 tons of hay. So it really escalated, you know, the product that a farmer could do.
So tell me a little bit about this house. You were telling us earlier about the difference between this room and the room over there, just the little subtle differences.
Yes. Well, this is not like a mansion in town. You know, this did not have the wealth that the brother-in-law had, but this was a good farm, you know, and certainly a good income. And so what we see reflected here is the style home that a well-to-do farmer would have. And so we kept the stone kitchen. That part was, I shouldn't say we did, that was kept when they built the new house here. But there's little details. This is a Greek Revival vernacular style, which means common, you know, popular style of the time. And it has 2 parlors. And this parlor that we're sitting in now is directly across from the kitchen. There's a breezeway porch. And this is where a lot of the work and enjoyment of the family went on. This is where you could have dining. This is where you could be doing schoolwork and spinning and sewing. Okay, well, there's little details in the architecture difference in the two rooms. Like in this room, the baseboard is just a simple board, okay, and there's no pediment above the door frames or the windows. But in the parlor on the other side, there's a pediment, there's a raised crown on the molding. The stairway has 4 colors in the steps. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I didn't.
There's a light gray, a dark gray, a medium gray, and white to really architecturally make it stand out. So lots of things are done in that area to draw attention and make it look more attractive. And the panel doors in both parlors, they were faux grained to look like rosewood, because a person might not be able to afford rosewood, but there were people in the area who could do the faux graining and make it look like rosewood.
Okay, okay. And could you tell us a little bit about the spinning wheel behind us?
Oh yeah, we're so happy to have this piece. And we didn't really realize we had it to begin with. With our museum, we've been doing research on a lot of the items we have in the museum and trying to find out the provenance on them. Well, a lady who worked for us, Carolyn Heisel, she was going through old newspapers and she found where it said Mary Thiebaud's spinning wheel had been donated to the Historical Society. Well, we had 2 spinning wheels down at the museum. Okay, so we started inspecting them, and there's a piece of tape on one of the spinning wheels that has her name on it. Since then, we have a photograph that we have of her at that spinning wheel, so we can tell by the spindle design, this is that spinning wheel.
Good.
And it needed some repairs, and Jerry Wallen with Wallen Forge and Vivi, he was able to splice on a piece of wood to make it round again and redo some of the parts there, and it spins beautifully. So it's really nice that we have some original pieces from the house.
Okay. And then upstairs, those are just bedrooms?
We have 2 bedrooms upstairs. Now remember, they had 10 children, but these 10 children were over a 20-year period. It's almost like every 2 years she's having another child. So when the oldest daughter's marrying, she's pregnant with the last. Okay, so there's only 2 bedrooms, but back in that time period, you didn't have your own bed. You know, we're all so spoiled now. But children slept with other children to keep warm, and it was just the way it was. So we have 2 beds in the one room and 2 beds in the other, and there could have been a trundle or a pallet below one of those also. Okay.
So what is your favorite story about this farmstead? What do you really enjoy telling people
I
about?
can think of the one. Okay, when we were doing the restoration on the house, I got a call from the contractor. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and it's a scripture, which I didn't recognize. And so he says, if you want to know what I'm talking about, you best come out to the farmstead. So I did, and it turns out when they took the big box, the key lock, off of the door so that they could do work on the door, there was a little page out of a Bible from Revelations, and it had that page in there. It was just like tissue paper thin, but it was still intact, kind of eaten away at the edges. So we did put a copy of that back in there, but we have the original at the museum. Just to find something like that that is from the people who built the house, that was a special touch, and obviously that meant something to them, or they wouldn't have put it there.
Yeah. So you think that was one of the original pieces when the house was built?
Yes. I don't think that box had been off of there since then.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and the door had been painted many times, because also in the process of redoing the house, we had a historic paint analysis so that we could find out what were the original colors and go back to those colors. So there were many layers of paint on everything, and lots of wallpaper, and so we were able to go back to original colors, and that's what you see throughout the house.
Okay. Now the glass in the house, has this all been replaced, or is some of it the original?
No, the majority of our windows are still intact. That was another nice thing about the house. The windows had not been replaced. They had put on aluminum siding, and we did take that off and go back to the clapboard siding. But the original windows were still there. You can see some are wavy, and the ones that aren't are usually the ones that were replaced. So there have been some replacements, but the majority of it's old.
So tell me about the kitchen. It's absolutely beautiful. It's made out of stone. It was built in the early 1800s?
1817, yes. When the Thiebauds came, he had enough money to have money sent ahead and already have that built. So that, and there had supposedly been a cabin that the 3 families that I mentioned earlier could stay in until they got their properties done. So yes, it's an old stone building. That building, though, had to have a lot of restoration work to it. There had been no fireplace left. They had completely taken that out. Part of the ceiling was falling down. So when we took down the ceiling, which had these acoustic tile type things nailed up, so when they fell, down came the plaster. But where we found the opening of where the fireplace had been. Okay. And then we also checked with Sonny Ash. He was with the DNR then, and he was a great person as a resource on restoration. And I had called him when we were in process, and I said, well, would there have been a door or window? What would have been on the side? And he says, look up on the beam. Do you see any nail patterns? And I said, yes, on this side there's nail patterns. He says, that's where the wall was. And so we figured out that, and then there was a shadow in the plaster to show us where the cupboard was. There was another door in there, but in redoing the plaster, and a lot of it had fallen because nobody had lived here for about 20 years. So the house had some roof problems, and so we were able to start over when needed. So the plaster was off, and we could see where the notches were in, where there had originally been a window, but they'd made a door. They had done that because at one time this breezeway porch had been enclosed in later years, not in the time he was lived here. And then they wanted another way to get through the kitchen from one side of the building to the other. So we went back to having the window there, so we had to rebuild that in there. There's another building on our site that is original, and we've done a lot of work on it, and we hope this fall to be actually smoking meat. It's the old Smokehouse, and according to the agricultural census, they had a high number of hogs. So right away that showed us this wasn't just for the family, this was a commercial endeavor for them. They also had a lot of sheep, and that's with the wool, and that's why they had the spinning. Okay.
So tell me a little bit about the museum. Is that open every day?
Yes, okay. Unfortunately, the farmstead can't be every weekend, but the museum is open daily, year-round, noon to 4.
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for walking us through this historic home. It's beautiful. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Thanks for watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. We hope you enjoyed today's edition. And remember, travel slowly and stop often. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.